Okay, this video is going to look at the first major debate question of the Norman Conquest course. And that, of course, is the question, was Anglo-Saxon England a golden age? Now, first things first, let's just remember, super important, when we say Anglo-Saxon, that means England before the Normans arrive. So this question is all about before William, before Hastings, before the Normans. Was England in a kind of a golden age? How good was life in England for the English people? So we, of course, need our arguments for that it was a golden age and our arguments against that would question this idea. So let's look through 3 points on either side. First of all, you could argue that England was one of the richest and best organised countries in Europe. So this does suggest a kind of a golden age. Super rich, really well organised, obviously good things. Let's look at a little bit more detail. So we have a very clear structure of governments. People know who's in charge. The country is together. Yes, there's a little bit of fighting here and there and some arguments, but essentially, and this isn't the same in lots of places in Europe, England is a country. It is connected. It is organized. You then have these royal mints. You have coins which are produced, which are reliable, are trusted. This really helps with trade, with taxation. It helps with organization of the country and helps the economy boom. And linked to that, we could say that tax and trade are efficiently organized. We have these 30 shires, so those are kind of areas of the country that England is broken up into, and we have burhs, so fortified towns, and these are places where trade can prosper and the country can develop, trusting each other, developing alongside these kind of businesses which benefit from these systems. So there's reason number one why we could say it was a golden age. Now, others would point to the rights, particularly which women enjoyed at this time, and use this to suggest a golden age in the sense that we have respect for people, there are rights, there are laws which show a developed idea of how people should live and treat each other. So, what were some of these women's rights? Well, women had the right to own property and land. There was laws that women were worth the same as men in the Guilds. A woman could divorce her husband if he had committed adultery, and there were laws against sexual harassment. This is quite rare, this is quite unique compared to other countries. And again, people would say, yeah, this shows a golden age. This shows a country, a society which values people and is more advanced in many ways than many countries. Thirdly, for this argument that it was a golden age, we could look at this idea of high quality and varied culture. So many people would say when you look at the literature, you look at the kind of jewelry, it shows a people who are skillful, it shows people who are creative, developed, educated. And again, all of these things are ideas which would be tied in with a golden age, an age where people aren't just farming and working and life is tough. These are people who are going beyond that, a creative spurt. So we want a couple of examples. We have the Alfred Jewel, and in terms of literature, we could look at Beowulf. So that all sounds pretty good, right? Many people would say, okay, yeah, it's definitely a golden age. It's organized, it's rich, women have rights, it's great culture. Not everyone would agree, though. Many, in fact, would say this idea of a golden age is wrong. And let's look at 3 reasons why they might say that. So, first of all, people might say, well, England's not a golden age really because it's so divided and many people live tough lives. You have this very hierarchical system. So, we have the king at the top, we have earls, and then we have thanes. Now, this is a tiny minority of the country is part of these groups. Yes, these groups were rich. Yes, you could say these groups, these people had great lives, living perhaps in a kind of golden age. But what about the majority of people? So next in the hierarchy come churls. This is roughly 90% of the country, 1.8 million people. And most of these people, they rent their lands. They're quite tightly controlled by thanes. Most of them are farmers living tough lives, trying to get enough food to survive and pay the rent. But then below them, we have thralls. This is 10% of the country and essentially slaves. So a strong argument for saying England, Anglo-Saxon England, was not a golden age would be how many people were treated, how many people lived their lives in really tough circumstances without freedom and without opportunities really of kind of progression up this hierarchy. And those thralls in particular are a strong argument for this not being a golden age. How can you say it's a fantastic society if 10% of people are enslaved? That would be one argument. Second point, we're going to come back to women's rights. Now, this is a good example of where we don't have to argue if we're saying it wasn't a golden age. We don't have to say it was terrible, but we could question some of the ideas that people say when they're saying it is a golden age. So, okay, there were those laws which we talked about a minute ago, but you could argue that those rights were only really enjoyed by wealthy women. You could say that in reality, cases of divorce were very rare. And you could use this statistic. Only about 5% of land is actually owned by women. So some people would say, the idea of a golden age is an exaggeration. And people that say women had great rights, well, in reality, was that true? So you could question those things. The final point, why some people would say England was not in a golden age, would be to look at religion. And remember, religion is such a huge part of society at this time. And it could be argued that religion in Anglo-Saxon England was backward and corrupt. Certainly, many people thought that, certainly across Europe. So, why would they say that? Well, you have leaders, people like Stigand, he's the archbishop, just before the Norman Conquest, so the most powerful religious person. He's using the church to get rich, he's breaking rules, he's selling jobs to people, and not what you want your religious leaders to be like. People said that religion in England was still a kind of mix of Christianity and some pagan beliefs, so that showed it was backward. And you could also argue that the English clergy, the priests, the bishops, were poorly educated compared to those in other European countries. So this super important part of people's lives, religion, you could say, well, doesn't seem like that's very golden age-like. Now, remember, the beauty of this is there's no wrong or right answer. It's about how well you explain your point. So if we come back to the major question, was Anglo-Saxon England a golden age? You need to have your reasons for, your reasons against, consider your overall opinion, and remember that the high marks, the high grades, come to those who explain their ideas best. And never forget the simple point, evidence, explanation, structure, a really good way to make sure that you are hitting those high marks. So a quick example, points would be something like, it was a golden age because Anglo-Saxon England was well organised and trade was booming. We then need our evidence to back that up. So we could say kings set up these mints which produced quality, reliable coins. And then the top marks come the explanation. You have to then prove or show how does that suggest a golden age. All right, so make up your mind, write a bit of a plan for this debate question, and then you can watch the second debate video.